To this now, President Cyril Ramaphosa has designated the funeral of Pastor Rhema McCauley as a special provincial official funeral category 2. Now, this follows Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's request that the president honor the life of the pioneering religious leader, social reformer and founder of Rhema Bible Church. The funeral will be held on Saturday. Well, the memorial service will meanwhile start at 7 o'clock tonight at Rhema Bible Church in Randburg. Pastor McCauley established the church in the late 1970s, spreading the gospel of racial integration even at the height of apartheid. McCauley passed away at his home last week at the age of 75. At the time of his death, McCauley had stepped down from his duties. He leaves behind a church which today has about 45,000 members. Well, for more on the memorial service, we're now joined by a reporter, our senior reporter, that is Griselda Lewis. Good afternoon to you, Griselda. Of course, we have no doubt that this is going to be just one of those very packed services, considering the legacy that Rhema McCauley leaves behind.
Well, certainly, Unati, and it certainly does not come as a surprise that the honouring service or the memorial service for the late Pastor Rhema McCauley is taking place here at the Rhema Bible Church North in Randburg in Johannesburg. This is the church that he founded back in 1979, and without a doubt, from what we've heard and what many would attest to, it certainly has become one of the most influential churches in Southern Africa. We've heard a number of tributes that have been pouring in since the announcement of his passing. But Unati, what we've certainly heard mostly is about the indelible mark or the role that Pastor Rhema McCauley had played in significant dialogue that saw a peaceful and smooth transition of South Africa into democracy in 1994. He's been described as a man of peace. And if we look back to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, you would recall at the time he had been the president of one of the federations of international Christian churches, and at the time he spoke about or even urged white South Africans at the time, to admit that they'd been manipulated by the apartheid government. He's been described, of course, as a man of peace. And Unati, I must tell you, I'm actually a congregant at this church, and one of the services that I attended was just shortly before the elections, the last elections here in South Africa. And I recall him praying for a peaceful election for the country, urging the congregation to also pray with him for peace ahead of the election. So many have said this is a man that was concerned and wanted to see South Africa in a good space, always looking to where he could contribute, even away from the pulpit, to ensuring that South Africa was moving in the right direction. Many have also described him as a mentor. There are many young pastors at this church, who have come through the doors of the Rhema Bible Church North here in Randburg in Johannesburg that can attest to the mentorship of the late Pastor Rhema McCauley and the indelible mark that he has made towards the contribution of seeing young people also progress and on the right direction as well. I don't want to waste much time. I want to bring in one of the pastors here at this church, Pastor Wayne Chafunya, who will talk to us. You've had a very long week, Pastor Wayne, and I can only but imagine it all culminating to this moment, honouring Pastor Rhema McCauley for the contribution that he's made, standing right at that pulpit, as well as the contribution that he made away from it.
Yeah, this is definitely the culmination of, I think it's a weighty expectation, which is also God's invitation. So it has been hard and very challenging to actually put up a service like we have tonight, to get some of his friends from overseas, from across Africa, to be here. But by God's grace, we've managed to actually put everything together, and we're just waiting to see what God is going to do tonight. We've managed to actually get his friends from childhood, fellow pastors, people that ran the race with him. The family is all here. We get to see all the McCauleys in one place in a very, very long time. So we all wait now to see what's going to happen in the service. But I can tell you right now, it's the converging of the secular and the sacred coming together. And I think that's what the house of God needs to look like.
And much has been said over the past week about his legacy. and the contribution that he has made, far and wide. I recall just before the elections, he was here and he spoke about, I think it was Premier Panyaza Lesufi who was also in attendance.
Yeah.
And he spoke about, South Africa having to continue on a certain path of peace, how we need to pray for our country. He was concerned about the church. He was concerned about South Africa. He was concerned about South Africa's people. Let's talk about that legacy. And I guess that baton is now handed over to Josh as well as the congregation and to yourselves as well.
Yeah, and Pastor Ray always believed that as a nation we need to have common fronts where we agree on certain things. Unity, peace, freedom, freedom of speech, freedom to worship. And those are the things that he never compromised on. So when it came to elections, he made sure that we as congregation, we must not forget that we are part of society, we are part of the nation. It is our duty as citizens to go and vote. So he was very vocal about that. But he also emphasized on the fact that when we go to vote, we need to understand that there are other people who've got different opinions in terms of their choices on who they vote for. We need to respect that. And that go and cast your vote, that's your vote, it's yours, but also respect other people. Let's do that in a peaceful manner. He was a man that always was in touch with what's happening in the country. Yeah. Wherever there's a disaster, he was the first one to say, guys, what are we doing about this thing? Can we send aid? Can we send help? Do we need to send buses? Do we need to erect temporary shelter for these people? He was very much in touch with what is happening in our nation,
And I mean, for you, I recall on that day, obviously he had become quite frail, and that service was actually very short. I'd attended with my family, and you helped him on the stage that day. What lessons do you, as young pastors, take from this giant of a man in terms of steering the church going forward, and also making sure that, the messages that he held true to is what would echo for generations to come as this church stands?
As a child, an African child, we all know that when our parents get older, it's our mandate, it's our duty to make sure we are there to help him finish strong. And that was the case with Pastor Ray, that we made a promise to him that we're going to help him to finish strong. So for as long as he was able to speak and be able to preach, we were going to do everything and anything to make sure that he's able to preach so that he can finish strong. That was his desire, to make sure that he goes out with a bang. And he did. 3 weeks ago, he preached one of the most profound messages you ever hear him preach. And he was actually saying goodbye to us. We just didn't understand it at that moment. But in hindsight, we could see that he was actually saying goodbye to the congregation and to all of us. I think for me personally, I have learned so many things from Pastor Ray. Humility, generosity, but most important to always recognize and see people in the corridors. That was one thing that Pastor Ray would never walk in a corridor, in a passage at the mall or in church, and he meets people. He always acknowledges people. He always was in touch with people. And he did that with everybody, not only staff or someone who's a pastor, but everybody. Yeah. So there's so many things that we have learned from him, and we're still going to continue to learn from him, because history has got a lot of material that we can always go back and study the man that was once among us. Yeah.
And that last service was, I recall the part that said, as you leave, God goes with you, he doesn't stay in the auditorium.
Yes.
Right, that was the one, right?
Yes, that's
the one. I mean, how do you then how do we carry this legacy? What would we say then needs to be done to ensure that this legacy, continues to stand? And we always remember Pastor Ray for the giant that he was.
Yeah, I think one of his last words was, the best is yet to come. And when it comes to the legacy, Pastor Ray wants us to exceed what he has done. He doesn't want us to maintain what we have here. He wants us to do more than what he had done. I think I've always said that legacy is leaving a place better than you found it. But in the case of Pastor Ray, he didn't find anything. He had to start everything from scratch.
Correct.
But he has left what you see here and some stuff that you cannot see. We need to make sure that we leave this place when it's our time better than we found it. That's number one. Number two is legacy is who you leave behind. It's so evident today, and you're going to see as people flock in that there are so many people that Pastor Ray has left behind to carry his legacy forward. And lastly, legacy is planting a tree fully knowing that you may not be able to live under its shade. Some of the things that we experience today and what we're going to experience in the days to come, months and years to come, Pastor Ray won't be able to witness or be part of that. But that is legacy. He put himself out there and made sure that he started what we see today to make sure that we have a place to sit under the shade. So that's going to go on, and we're going to make sure that we don't let the man of God down, but continue, pick up the baton and move forward, look after our community, get people to worship, and just be out there for those who are in need.
Pastor Wayne, thank you very much indeed. I'm looking forward to the next Sunday Night Live. It's always my favorite. Thank you very much. Indeed, Pastor Wayne Chafunya, who is, of course, one of the pastors here at the Rhema Bible Church North in Johannesburg. That's in Randburg, of course. This is where the honouring and memorial service for the late Pastor Ray McCauley will be taking place, starting at 7 o'clock this evening. We're expecting thousands of people to pack this auditorium.
Thank you very much for that, Criselda. Of course, our senior reporter, Criselda Lewis, just giving us a preview ahead of that memorial service that will be held this evening for the late Pastor Ray McCauley, the internationally acclaimed pastor, passed away at his home last week at the age of 75. President Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, has designated his funeral as a special provincial official funeral category 2.